All right, so now that we know how to represent data or collect data and organize it in a chart called a group frequency distribution or look at a distribution, and we also know how to graph it using histograms, I'm going to start showing you how quick news can misrepresent data. So let's take a look at this. It says graphs are used to represent data on a daily basis. Many times skewed visual representations of data are used to manipulate a point of view. A great website for reference is, and I provide the link to the reference that I used for the rest of this. So all of my resources come directly from that website from here on out. And then it says this has a website that has a nice article on real-life examples of misleading graphs, many of which are included in the notes for discussion. So I didn't use all of them in the notes, but I used several of them. All of these are real-world examples. So we're going to construct one together and see why it was misleading and what was done wrong. Okay, it says the following data represents the unemployment rate over a given year. So unemployment rate means what percentage of adults who could work are not working. Unemployment numbers are bad numbers. You do not want high unemployment rates. So what you're looking for is low numbers here, okay? So here were the actual data statistics. And I'm not even going to get into whether are these numbers actually accurate or not. How the heck do they know that 9% of the population is unemployed? Is that because they use unemployment data? Do they go house to ask about it? So is this even accurate? I don't want to get into that. My guess is no, it's not too accurate, but these are the numbers that we use, okay? So here's where it is. They took the unemployment data over almost a year. They stopped in November, and let's see what they did. What we're going to do is draw a nice little, I'm actually going to do a line graph, which is just a histogram, but instead of doing bars, you just do dots and connect the dots, okay? So let's start off. With January, it was at 9%. That would be a dot about there. February is 8.9%, just ever so slightly less than that. March, 8.8, again, ever so slightly less. April went up to 9%, looks like that right there. May, 9.1%, so just a little bit higher for May. June was 9.2, just a tiny bit higher. July, 9.1, a little bit lower. August, 9.1, looks like it's maintaining. September, 9.1, great. October would be 9, so down just a little bit. And November, 8.6, which would be down about there, the lowest that it was the entire year. So if we connect those dots, we're looking at something that looks like this. This is called a line graph. We could have done this with a histogram bar graph, but I'm going to go ahead and use a line graph right here, okay? I want you to do the exact same data, but on this different scale. Notice, we still have the same classes. The classes are the months. We've labeled each month. Notice the only thing that has changed is my y-axis. So what if I used percentage rates of 5, 10, 15, 20% instead of 8, 8.59, and 9.5? How does that change the visualization of this graph? Okay, so if January was 9, I'm going to guess that's right about there. And then it went down to February was 8.9. I mean, that's almost identical on this graph. March was about 8.8, almost identical, just a tiny bit lower. 9%. We have a 9.1, a 9.2, a 9.1, a 9.1, another 9.1, a 9.0, and then an 8.6 down just ever so slightly. So look at these two different graphs. These two graphs, both accurate because they have the same classes, they have the same data, they both represent it, but each of these are grossly different, paint a grossly different picture. So I'm going to color the bottom graph red, and I'm going to color the top graph blue. And I want you to think about the situation, okay? Unemployment is a bad rate. So what you want to see if you in unemployment is due to the economy, and the economy is seen as a direct result of the president. I am not saying that the economy is a direct result of the president at all, but I'm saying that is often what it's reflected on. Good presidents, quote unquote, good presidents have good economies, and bad presidents have bad economies. That's generally how it is, okay? So the question is, if you look at the blue graph versus the red graph, this is the exact same data, how is it going to make you feel? Okay? So if I look at the red graph, the one with the 5, 10, 15, 20%, and I look at those employment rates, first of all, it seems like a low number. It's a smaller amount right there, and it seems like it's barely changing at all. So in the red graph, it makes me feel that unemployment rate is low and it's remaining steadily low. If I look at the blue graph, it makes me feel like unemployment rate is high. It takes up the majority of the picture. Without looking at the Y scale and understanding it, it makes me seem like because 9% is over halfway up on this graph, it makes me feel like over half the people are unemployed. So the blue graph would be used to make you scared, to make you think unemployment rates are high and changing drastically every single month. Okay? Red one, comfort. Blue one, fear. So the question is, which one of these two is going to be in the news? Well, the answer is, which news station are you looking at? For instance, right now we have a Republican president. Again, Fox News is a Republican news channel. So if I asked Fox News, or if we looked at Fox News and had them look at the unemployment rates, because Fox News is Republican and we have a Republican president, they want to support the president and make them have no fear, make him look like everything's really good. So currently, Fox News would be producing the red graph, the one that looks like unemployment rate is low, there's very little change. Whereas if I jumped over to CNN, CNN is a very democratic news station, very liberal. They want to paint President Trump as the worst enemy ever. So which graph are they going to show? Currently, because a Republican is president, CNN would show the blue graph, showing that it's scary. Unemployment rates are higher. Again, neither of these people have misrepresented the data, but both of them are manipulating the visual representation of the data to get their point of view across. It's a very scary thing. Both of these are using the exact same set of data, but just the visual representation can either invoke fear, the blue one, or invoke trust and support, the red one, all through a visual representation. And I want you guys to be able to see through that, okay? Likewise, I'm going to change the situation. Go back to President Barack Obama. President Obama was a Democrat. So the ones who supported him would have been CNN News. So when Barack was president, CNN would have showed the red graph. And when Barack was president, Fox News, because they are anti-democratic, Fox News would have shown the blue graph. So the question becomes, which one of these was real? What was the real situation? Because this was real data, and this was a chart actually shown on the news. So what was the situation? Go to the next page to figure it out. Okay, so we talked about the previous situation where we had the same data sets. We could drastically change it just by changing the scale of our graph. Does it invoke trust? Does it invoke fear? Well, what was this? This was set when Barack Obama was president. Barack Obama, again, was a Democrat. Fox News, again, a very Republican, very, very Republican station. So I want you to look, which one of these two did they use? This is the exact scale, the exact graph that we did in the first one. This was the graph that they're using to invoke fear. So it says, here's the graph of the exact same date presented by Fox News. Do you see any errors? And what do you think about how they presented the data? Discuss it, okay? So this was in 2011. This was from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It was the unemployment rate. Again, they are using the graph that invokes fear. 9% is very, very low. It is less than 1/10 of the population. But if you look at that picture, 9%, the height of it is over half the graph. It makes you feel like over half the population is gone, unemployed, not working. That's not the case at all. This is not to true scale at all. It is emphasized drastically. I also want you guys to notice something else. Look at that last data point right there, 8.6%. If you notice, 8.6%, according to their scale, looks almost identical to that 9%. If they had really graphed that 8.6% properly, it would have been a steep decline in the graph at that point. But they didn't. So not only are they changing the graph to make you fearful, they're also screwing up the data. They didn't even plot the friggin' number right. I also want you to notice something else that they did. Notice they didn't include the month of December. Why didn't they include the month of December? Well, what happens in the month of December? The month of December has the highest employment rates. That's where all those seasonal workers get employed. So if they included the month of December, it would have gone down even further. So of course they don't include it because they don't want you to see it. They are trying to show you a picture and make you feel how they want you to feel. Okay, again, this is an example of Fox News doing this. I'm not saying other news stations do it, but I am for sure saying Fox News is by far upmost the worst by far news station ever for presenting this stuff that I've ever seen for mainstream news, mainstream media. So if you look below, they did it on the same scale. What should it look like? They actually graphed the truth that 8.6 should have been significantly further down. And even then, I would still argue with this because the scale on the y-axis is built to make you fear the actual numbers. It is supposed to emphasize the fact that unemployment rate's super high by zooming in on it so much. I mean, if we looked at this in true scale, if we did a 0 to 100 as a percent, we would be talking about pretty much a straight line all the way down towards the bottom. Very, very low unemployment rates, but they emphasize it to get their point across. So anytime you see something in the news, I want you to check it. I want you to double check it. I want you to triple check it. I want you to think about, where did they get this data from? Is this a non-biased source where they got the data from? How did they represent the data? Did they even label the axes or the axes properly? Does it even make sense? For instance, unemployment rate, they're showing how it changed throughout the year. I don't know if that's a good number or a bad number. So what was it in 2010? What was it in 2005? What was it in 2015? So they're not even comparing year to year. They're comparing each month to month throughout the year. So I don't even know if these numbers are bad. So you've got to think about, what does this graph actually show? And the answer is, to me, it shows nothing. It shows their lack of understanding of the data. And honestly, they're not comparing anything that can give me any value or worth. It shows me nothing about what's actually going on. Is this a good year? Is this a bad year? All it showed is, here's how it changed within the year. I have no true data to compare this to. I have no idea if this is good or bad. I just know that it's misrepresentative, it's misleading, they didn't even do it properly, and I know exactly what they're doing, trying to invoke fear.